Hello, my friends. My name is Gerdes. I'm just a professor trying to provide you context in the war in Ukraine. Today, we're going to talk about the casualty numbers, the Ukrainian casualties, the Russian casualties, and who says what about which. Okay, let's get started. 1790 Russians off the battlefield today, December 2nd, 2024. That's a pretty high number, and we'll explain in just a moment. Tanks, 9 tanks off the battlefield, 28 armored fighting vehicles, 30 artillery systems, 99 vehicles and fuel tanks. So what does that mean, 1790? Well, let's look at this first. And this is the casualty rate. Let's look at this, what we have here, top 10. 2030 is the highest, 1950 is the second highest, 1790 is the third highest. That is today, displacing a tie on November 11th and November 13th at 1770. So it's a pretty high number today. Okay, so I showed you this the other day. Russia suffered record casualties in Ukraine in November 2024, 45,720. And I disputed that number saying, hey, look, when I look at my numbers say that it's 45,000. It's like 270 less. And I couldn't figure out what was going on here. I went through every day 1460 all the way down to 1740. And then somebody reached out to me. His name was Adrian. And Adrian said, hello, Professor. Monthly casualty figure should include the one announced for the first of the following month. That is the losses from the previous day, but not the one announced on the first of the month. Really the losses of the last day of the previous month. I had to work this out too. Thanks for your work. Kind regards, Adrian. Adrian, thank you so much. That actually made sense of this. And so the number that you see here is actually the number that I have. Once I have accomplished that, it's 45,720. So that's it. 45,720 is the official number as well. And I'm not going to belabor what that means for the average months in each month. But it is a very high number. Average throughout the war is 735 per day, and you're at what, 17,000 or 1,790. So it's a significant difference. Now, sometimes I get people that'll say, I had somebody say this yesterday, you never talk about Ukrainian casualties. I did. Go back to Thanksgiving Day, my daily brief, and I talked about how it's, according to the Economist magazine, it looks like 2/3, like it looks like 2 to every 3 from the Economist magazine statistics. And they may be right or they may be wrong. That's the most recent that we have, and that's what I was explaining from. Now, somebody else reached out to me after I posted this on the 30th. I just did the math for November. It's 45,450. Remember, that's before I realized the day one and day one switch. And this is the highest month since the war began. And then Combat Doctrine reached out and said, and for context, Ukraine lost this. Now, I can only imagine he's talking about the 68,690, not the 927,155. I'm thinking that this is the total for the war, according to Russia, and this is the total for the month. Now, this is 50% higher than what the Ukrainian figures are for Russians when they're on the defensive, so that doesn't sound plausible at all. And this is about 25% higher than what the Ukrainians say about the Russians. So that doesn't sound terribly plausible either. I said, please tell me where these numbers are from. And they said the Russian equivalent of your source is the Russian Ministry of Defense. So if I'm reading this right, the Russian Ministry of Defense is saying that the highest month casualties are 50% higher for the defending Ukrainians than they are for the attacking meat wave Russians. And that just sounds crazy implausible to me. But I could be wrong. Show me if you see something that I don't see. Point it out to me. But I don't rely on the Russian Ministry of Defense just because they lie so frequently. It's hard to see when they actually tell the truth. This is Andrew Perpetua's list. It's about 2 to 1, maybe a little bit more than 2 to 1 for yesterday. And then he was talking about this here, my past 100 days of Russian losses. 9,339 dead. Now remember, when he's looking at this, he's only looking at like a tank that's been hit, or a guy on a motorcycle, or hit with a drone or something something along those lines. These videos that he can determine. 140 destroyed artillery systems, 361 destroyed tanks, 745 destroyed IFVs, 315 destroyed APACs or APCs, 23 destroyed air defense systems, 14 destroyed radars, 37 destroyed engineering equipment, 322 destroyed trucks, 1,660 destroyed transport vehicles. Okay, so that's where the height is at the transport vehicles, right? Okay, so that gives you a sense of what's going on in the battlefield in the last 100 days. Okay, Russia hits another month of record losses in, and Jane Kiev posted this, and he said October, but what he meant was November, and it's easy to, substitute something. I've done that before, with over 3 billion in equipment and nearly 46,000 casualties. Okay, so we know what the numbers are, and 3 billion in equipment, that's crazy to go by as well. But look at the progression here. Okay, yep, highest, second highest. Yeah, okay. So it's something significant. Now, Andrew Perpetua talks about it's funny that people think that business is the reason that U.S. aid is given to Ukraine. Brosefs, I've never heard that term before. I'm pretty sure if I pay attention, my teenagers might start saying that. If you followed this war at all, you would understand how laughable it is, how frustrating it has been that the defense industry not only is totally unprepared for this war, but also how unwilling they are to even care about this war. Yeah, there's something to that. It's hard to get the defense industry like actually in motion here. Okay, let's look at this. Overnight, out of 110 drones that attacked Ukraine, 52 were shot down and 50 were suppressed by electronic warfare. So that's 102. 6 returned to Russia. 1 more is still in Ukrainian airspace. And this is what the swarm of drones looked like last night. Overnight, Russia targeted residential areas in western Ukraine, the city of Ternopil, with Shahed drones, killing 1 person, injuring 3, destroying homes, schools, civilian infrastructure, 0 military objective, 800 kilometers from the front line. Ternopil is somewhere near Lviv. It's over on the western side. It's like the next major city over from Lviv. And yeah, there's no reason for that. Okay, let's turn our attention to the front lines. Ukrainian forces recently advanced in the Kursk Oblast, but that's about the only good news. Let's just look at the trends of the attacks. In Kherson, the Russians had 4 unsuccessful assaults. In the Bakhmut front near Chasiv Yar, that assault ended in failure. Toretsk area 7 times. In Lyman, 8 times. Kupiansk direction, 9 attacks. Kharkiv direction, 10 enemy attacks. Raminka direction, 24 times. Pokrovsk direction, 33 assaults. Kharkiv direction, 48 attacks. Yeah, that's just where it's high, and yeah, we know that we could have predicted those last 2 pretty easily at this point. Okay, Russia receives these kind of leaflets to preserve their honor to the end. So this is saying in Russian how to commit suicide if you're wounded on the front line. It's pretty nasty to think that that's what's going on here. To keep honor to the end, this is a Google Translate. To ensure instant death, aim for critical areas of the head: a temple, a shot to the side of the skull, chin, the lower jaw. Direct shot provides immediate neutralization of vital functions. Important, stay calm and confident and pull the trigger. If you don't have a weapon, use a grenade, and explain how. Like, that's part of the instructions that are being fed to Russian soldiers on the front line, because they don't really matter. Now, they're costly, they're expensive. Here, 7 regions increased their payments in November. So the average is $23,524 as a one-time payment for new soldiers. But don't worry, those new soldiers will be used up and they won't continue to cost you, because in about a month they're going to be eliminated statistically. Now, Putin approved the 2025 budget with defense spending at about 40% allocated to the national defense and domestic security. Now, I talked about that yesterday, and those numbers didn't quite sound right because I talked about the percentage increase, which is about 30% from last year when I talked about it. So let me clarify this. In 2024, Russia significantly increased spending of its budget for defense, approximately 28.3% of the budget. I talked about it in round numbers of about 30%. According to the Institute for the Study of War, the budget for 2025 allocates approximately 41% of Russia's annual expenditures to national defense and security sectors. So that's high. The ISW reported that increased defense spending does not directly translate to proportional military capability enhancements. So it's not like they're going to be 40% or X number 30% better than what they were before. They're just spending more at this point. And part of that is the drop in the cost, or part of that is the economy is becoming more sketchy in multiple regards. Okay, the men, I saw this story the other day. There was a nightclub that was raided in Moscow, and there was a big thing about how maybe it had something to do with LGBT or something along those lines. And I was like, you know, in the prioritization that I have to go through, it just didn't make the cut. Well, the men taken away during the nightclub raids on Friday night in Moscow were issued military summonses on the spot. They were to appear at conscription offices today. So that's what was happening. That might have been what was motivating these charges. Yeah, I mean, it's just they need men on the front line. The Cold War never ended for Russia. This is just some commentary. The West convinced themselves that they had won and treated Russia like a normal country. But Russia is at war with us, and we are ignoring it, hoping it goes away. It won't go away, and you can't win a war if you don't fight back. There's some truth to that. I think this is actually quite spot on. Okay, just a few more things. Russian military is considering establishment of a separate service branch for unmanned systems. I don't know what's taking it so long. Ukraine figured this out a long time ago. Likely as part of a Russian Ministry of Defense in a belated effort to catch up to the establishment of the Ukrainian Unmanned Systems Forces in February of 2024. And that has been a wonderful thing for Ukrainians, that the unmanned forces. Meanwhile, Myanmar and Laos are also fighting for Russia. Z-bloggers are publishing photos of Myanmar and Laotian soldiers fighting on the side of Russia. Like, what autocracies are not sending their people there? There are Syrians, there are, I guess I haven't seen Iranians on the field, but that just means that I haven't seen it. Yeah. Okay. Just a little bit more. Russian Lancet loitering munition intercepted by an FPV drone. Here we are. That's the guy, and he's gonna go and bam. Just love seeing drones attacking drones. It's just fascinating. Okay, and eyes on the prize. This is what the soldier looks like with his headset on, watching and directing those drones where they need to go. Vampire bomber drones will ensure nightmares for the occupiers. These things are pretty amazing looking, these vampire drones. They're much larger than the average, and I don't know that I would want whatever that thing can carry and drop on me. Okay, last little bit. Snow and frost test the strength of our warriors on the front line, but the resolve never wavers. Look how frozen that is. That's pant legs of a soldier. Oh, if you're the praying type, keep them in your prayers. It's getting cold out there in Ukraine. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.